Alô, pessoal, tudo bem? Faz um tempinho que eu gravei uma série de entrevistas de um projeto que a gente batizou como InterAction, que você tem uma interação ali e a gente está conversando com pessoas de destaque aqui no mundo de Hollywood, nos filmes de ação. Esse primeiro episódio é com um diretor talentosíssimo, diretor, produtor, Derek Wayne Johnson. Acompanhem aí. Hello, everybody. This is InterAction, and our show has action in the name, and that's why we call the best people to get some time with us. And I prefer not to call it an interview. This is like a chat. And today we have the writer, director, actor, martial artist. He is like the man for any job that you need, Derek Wayne Johnson. How are you, Derek?
I'm doing well. How are you? I appreciate you having me on. Actually, former actor. I haven't acted. I haven't acted in probably 10 years or so. But, you know, it's on IMDb, so it's still there and blah, 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 blah. No, I'm a filmmaker, but no more.
Yeah, I know. But they say once an actor, always an actor, you know. Maybe in your directing or in your producing something, you might have some Hitchcockian appearance in the movie, like walking in the background. It's always fun to do something like that.
Well, that's very true. And yes, I still do that for sure.
All right. Very good. Derek, we are very happy to have you on the show because we would love to share some... we would love you to share some of your experiences and the nice projects that you have been involved, because you seem to have progressed a lot in a very short. It looks short when you think of history. I know it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. It's never easy. Would you tell us a little bit about the beginnings of your journey? How did you start? When did you have this bug biting you, like, I want to be a filmmaker? When did this happen?
I was about 3 years old, and I fell in love with movies completely. And I can't even separate my memories of childhood I can't take movies out of my childhood memory because it was such a big thing for me. Specifically, and I've told this story a million times, but it's such a cool story. The first movie I remember seeing in a theater was The Karate Kid Part 2 when I was 3.
Nice.
And I could see like these scenes and these shots and everything, and I was just mesmerized at this huge production before my eyes. And that really struck with me. I can still see it to this day up on the screen. And yeah, I knew early on that I wanted to make movies. But, you know, I'm just this kid from the countryside of a small town in East Texas, and there was no way to do that, you know. So I had these dreams, and I just very fortunate that just something happened in my life to where I just felt like this is what I want to do and I have to do it. And you know, to take it further, I mean, that's when I knew I wanted to do it. But in high school is when I made my first short film. It was 1 minute long.
All right.
And it was 1 minute. And we sent it to some competitions, you know, specifically for schools. So it wasn't a film festival. It was like a technology fair or something like that. Okay. And we won first place and best of fair. So it was just like, wow, right out the gate, like I won an award. And it was just for 1 minute. So I kept making short films in in high school. And then I went on to film school. And then from there I got into the business. So, you know, you had mentioned earlier, it feels like a short time, but I've been around for quite a while.
Yes.
And I haven't hit yet. And I'm 38, so I've been around for quite a while. But I just feel like, you know, the future is very bright. And And I just feel like as a filmmaker, I have a whole future ahead of me. But those beginning stages were they shaped who I was as a storyteller.
Oh my God, you jumped ahead and you said a lot of stuff that I would like to know more in details. For example, the award thing. I didn't know about that. That the first thing that you ever kind of competed at, you boom, got an award. Because I know you got a lot of awards, and that's it's a very competitive market. We all know that. And from many of the nominations that you have had, and this is one of my questions. I'm jumping ahead as well. Well, before we start, I would like to tell you something because we have a huge Brazilian audience. And I would like to ask you, well, what do you know about Brazil? Do you know anything about Brazil?
Not a lot. I've never been to Brazil, but I want to. And I actually was supposed to go a few years ago for a film festival. And it just didn't work out. But what I do know about Brazil is that supposedly Brazilians really love my work.
They do.
I have read, yes. Yeah, it's like people are like, I always get told that it's very big there. Not like huge, but big. And I'm touched and I'm shocked. And, I always get sent like these articles and stuff. It's in Portuguese. I can't read it, but I'm even in a book about Sylvester Stallone, and there's a part about me in this book, and it's in Portuguese from this writer in Brazil, and I'm just like, what? So that's all I really know about Brazil is I want to go there, and that they kind of like me there.
Absolutely. This is where I was going to reach. The thing is, there are nice reviews from critics, and there are nice reviews from the average Joe about your job, about your body of work in Brazil. And this is one of the reasons that we wanted to bring you here and brought this audience in Brazil so they get to know you better and not be limited to the latest work that you have had. And we are going to talk about that as well. You mentioned that you have always wanted to be a filmmaker, but did that start as a hobby, or you always knew deep down inside if you were going to really work with that? And I'm going further now. How did your parents react? Were they supportive? Because I know a lot of people in this industry, when they say, oh, I want to be a filmmaker, I want to be an actor, I want to be a director, an artist, a writer. And parents sometimes, of course, they want their kids to be happy. But the thing is, I don't know if everybody has space to make it. So was it a hobby? And did your parents support you from the beginning? How was this relationship, or how did you convince them they supported you all the way? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I think as far as a hobby, it was more that I just absorbed movies. I grew up in the VHS era. So going to the rental store, renting movies, buying movies. I still have an extensive VHS collection that I just can't get rid of. It's too sentimental. But I would circle in the TV guide a month ahead of what I wanted to see. And it just became this passion of loving movies and watching them and rewatching them over and over. So my parents, they were supportive in the sense that they knew I loved movies, and we all would always watch movies. It was like a thing to do, whether we'd go to the cinema or my dad would come home with new releases on VHS or whatnot. But I will say this, and my dad and I have discussed this through the years, and we kind of laugh about it now. But, no one in my family are filmmakers or were actors or anything. I'm first generation for this crazy business. And my dad early on didn't understand. He would kind of get annoyed that I would watch the same movies over and over.
Oh, I know the drill.
Yeah, right. Because they think that's like, here it is. It entertained us for 2 hours of our lives, move on. But to me, that's like saying, oh, so we shouldn't reread the classic novels of, say, the 19th century, these classics. To me, films are the novels of the 20th century. So he would get annoyed, and we laugh about it now. And then he started to realize, wait, he watches these over and over because he's studying them and he's researching them and he's moved by them. This is his passion. And so my mother, on the flip side, and he's totally on board now, of course, but my mother, she kind of knew, and she kind of let me absorb film, absorb movies. She never questioned it whatsoever. And my grandparents were also influential in that. You know, one set of grandparents, my mother's parents, they were each born in 1917 and 1918. Okay. My dad's parents were born in 1935. So I had two different generations. So I learned a lot about classic cinema from my grandfather, who was born in 1918. And I learned a lot about kind of vintage 70s and 80s cinema from my grandfather, who was born in 1935.
Nice film school, huh?
Great film school. And he had one of those giant satellites in his yard. Okay. Yeah. That he would record these movies on tape. He'd give them to me, and we'd watch them. So that's kind of like as far as the support system. And, of course, they all grew to truly support me and still do. And like I said, my dad and I laugh about his lack of understanding at the time.
Yeah. Now you laugh, right?
Right.
I know the deal. Okay, all right. Why were you watching the same movies over and over again? Because this is a recurring thing. It's not that you were obsessed or anything. Were you kind of peeling down the layers of a movie and trying to understand, figure out camera, lenses, soundtrack, or you were just interested in getting more and more motivated because you were watching the same content over and over again?
Well, I think it started with that fascination and just getting that, you know, it was entertaining me and moving me, and I was fascinated by it. And it was like listening to a song over and over again. Then, as I got a little older, preteen, and especially teenage years for sure, I would deconstruct a film. As a matter of fact, in high school, I would take certain movies that I loved, say Lethal Weapon, The Last Boy Scout, and I would like re-edit scenes at school. You know, I was in broadcast journalism class. I basically told my teacher I wanted to be a filmmaker, and he was like, "That's going to be tough, but okay." So he kind of let me do my thing. But I would also record, like, say I liked a song at the end of the movie, I would record it onto a tape recorder and listen to it over and over, and I would, like for example, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
I would deconstruct the scenes and the shots and the cinematography and how did he do that and why? Steven Spielberg, that is. So, but then there were times where I just felt good watching a movie, or maybe even just watching the end of the movie.
Yes.
And that kind of shaped my personality and who I was, you know, as a kid. So if I watched, and I know we'll talk about it, The Karate Kid or Rocky or Rudy or even La Bamba or things.
La Bamba was great at the time, right? Great.
Exactly. It would motivate me as a person, as an artist. And so it was a little bit later when I started deconstructing it, and now I kind of do the same every time I my brother, he goes, you know, why don't you watch enough new movies? And I say, I do watch new movies, but I also watch a lot of old movies because I'm studying them or they inspire me. The new movies, they have to be really good to catch my attention. And I know from the trailer if I'm going to give 2 hours of my life or not. Yes. And in this day and age, that's getting hard to do.
Man, I know what you're talking about. Sometimes after you finish watching a movie, you feel like writing to the producers or director or everybody and say, please give me my 2 hours of my life back, because it's just not worth it. And it's a guaranteed thing when you watch something that you have watched before, but at least you're learning something new. It's a new layer that you are, and as you mature, of course, you see new things, you see different things. Let's go back to the beginning and let's talk about short movies. Is there anything in the short movies that you have produced that you could transfer into the feature films that you have made, or even the documentaries that you have made? What's the relation, or how would you explain to the audience the difference between building a short movie and a feature film, but not just the size? What would be the basic differences in your opinion?
Well, certainly in a short film, you have to tell a story in a short amount of time. So it's kind of hard to have an act 1, act 2, and act 3 in, say your short film is 10 minutes long or 20 minutes. You have to learn how to tell a complete story, act 1, act 2, act 3, in that amount of time. And if you can do that and do it successfully, then it will translate over to a feature film. Now, the thing is about short films, although they're wonderful to do and they're great exercises, and every aspiring filmmaker should make them, we're also in a day and age where it's easier and cheaper to go ahead and make a feature film.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, say that, like, this is what I don't quite understand this. If you're, say, going to make 3 short films this year and they're each, say, 20 minutes long, well, that's 60 minutes.
Of course.
Why not go ahead and just turn it into one feature? Maybe add 20 more minutes on there. Now you have an 80-minute feature. You didn't have to do a short film. So, because we all have cell phones, you could shoot it on your phone. So, easier said than done, right? But a short film is great. Take that first one I did that was 1 minute. I had to tell a story in 1 minute.
Yeah.
And that certainly translates, because I think a lot of times people, when they start out doing feature films, they just drag and drag and drag and drag and drag the story, and because they didn't sharpen that tool by making a short film. So there's 2 ways of looking at it.
I'm curious now, Derek. I don't know if you remember, but what was the 1 minute film about? What was it about? What was the theme or the moral of the story? What did you tell in 1 minute?
It was called Downtown, and I played a police officer. I acted in it as well as directed and all the other stuff. And I busted a group of drug dealers in the high school. And we even had like this fight sequence and whatnot where I fought and arrested the drug dealers. And I remember one of them was not supposed to be no one's supposed to be doing the drugs, but he was like the hero, and he ended up dying at the end. And the moral was the drugs were too strong, and he couldn't take it. His body was too weak from the drugs, and he perishes. And although my character and my buddy's character got rid of these bad guys and arrested them, there was one guy that was buying the drugs from them that didn't survive. So you kind of see where it's going. It's like, if you're going to do the crime, you're going to do the time, or you might end up dead as well.
Man, I love this in English. If you do the crime, if you commit the crime, you do the time. I love this in English.
Exactly. So, but we did it in 1 minute.
Nice. Very nice. Well, you mentioned that you had a fight sequence and things like this. And I know that you have like some stunt credits as well. So you have worked as an actor, you have worked as a stunt, as a writer, producer, director, and probably you also served the coffee and lightning and everything else. What do you think is the most difficult thing when you are like putting a crew together to work in a feature film? Because you have this overview, you have the big picture in mind, especially because you have been around in many different roles in the production. So what's the thing that people should pay attention to when putting a crew together and creating a project with many talents around?
Well, fortunately, usually the crew that I grew up with are my friends, people that are professionals that I've worked with a lot of times, because I have a lot of connections from the industry, from film school, etc. And then, sometimes we have new faces as well that we get to work with, and that's always great. And then they become friends. So I kind of know ahead of time who it is I'm working with. But what you have to do is you have to remember when you're crewing up, everybody that you hire is a professional and a specialist at what they do. So just remember that. If you wouldn't be hiring them if you could do it all.
Of course.
So they bring something to the table, and you have to know that and respect that about your crew. Same thing with the cast. You're hiring them for their specific, tool, skill that they bring, or talent level that they bring to the project. And but I get to work with my friends a lot. And to me, that's how you get some of your best work. I mean, I work with other people as well that maybe I just hired that day and never work with them ever again. Uh-huh. But it's all about the product.
Yes.
Film isn't about the journey. It is about the end result. You always hear like, it's not about the result. It's about the journey. Not film.
No, you are as good as your last project, so you can't fool around. Which leads me to another question. Because you understand a lot of your own projects, and you have like several roles. I know you like editing your own films, your own products. I believe there is a lot of planning involved in your mind. But my question is, what's the percentage of planning, and how much do you improvise, or how much do you trust the talents that you are working with to deviate a little bit from your original concept?
Well, certainly as a director, the majority of my job, I have to come completely prepared. So pre-production is very vital as a filmmaker. You have to know what you're doing every step of the way, that when you arrive to the set, you can just be yourself. And by being yourself, that means being everyone's father, everyone's mother, everyone's brother, everyone's sister, everyone's friend, but also everyone's boss. So with that, if I did my job in pre-production and I come prepared, now that makes the playing field where I can see what other people bring to the table. So for example, take the way I work with actors. I don't command a whole lot out of actors up front. I let them bring something to the table, to me, to the project. I see what they naturally and organically come up with. Then and only then, if it's wrong or I'm not feeling it or I'm strong about my opinions on it, then I'll have them change it. So a lot of times actors, they've told me, hey, I want you to direct me more. Let's do 30 takes. You only did 4. What's going on? And I say, what's going on is I'm not going to ruin a good thing. Don't fix what doesn't need to be fixed. You already did your work. You're bringing something to the table. I think it's brilliant, so I'm going to let you do it. Then what's funny about that is there's the flip side. The flip side is when you are on top of them to get what you really know is right, and they get angry about that.
Okay.
And then they're like, well, I did it in the first 2 takes. Why are we doing take 10? Hold on a second. Maybe you didn't do it correctly. So you have to have an opinion and stick to that, but also be completely free that someone might have a better idea than you. Because at the end of the day, you're going to get the credit, not them.
Yes.
So for example, if a production assistant, if you open the floor and you ask, does anyone have any ideas? And the production assistant says, I've got one. And it's a great idea. That production assistant's not going to get credit for it. You are.
Yes.
So be open to that. But at the same time, it's really annoying when people speak out of turn. So you have to let them know, I'm the boss. Let's not, but go ahead and open the floor and you might have a good idea come your way.
Yes. Once I was talking to a director and I was asking him, what is a good actor in your opinion? And then he mentioned a good actor for me is a guy who brings 1,000 ideas to the table the very first day. I refuse them all. And the next day he comes with another 1,000 ideas. Because maybe one of his ideas is going to be like the best scene in the film or the iconic moment in the film, But the thing is, the director, he knows what he wants beforehand. This is the thing, Have you? What's the craziest thing that has ever happened to you on a movie set? Like, what's the craziest thing? An accident, or I don't know, someone was high. Tell me something crazy.
I can't even think right now what the craziest thing is. That's a great question, and my mind actually went blank. Okay, this isn't the craziest thing, but it's just the most recent, and I can't think of anything crazy at the moment. But we'll talk about it in a little bit about my latest film, Bloodstreams.
Okay,
we were filming Bloodstreams in my hometown in Texas, and we shut down a bridge to shoot a scene for the whole day. Okay. It was the law enforcement's idea to shut it down, not mine, but they felt it was safer to shut the bridge down. I thought we could just have maybe one lane of traffic. So they shut it down, and a lot of the locals were very upset because they had to drive an extra, say, 20, 30 minutes to get where they needed to go. So it's like, I believe, I don't think I'm making this up, I think it was the hottest recorded day in Texas history, or at least in a long time, and one of the hottest months ever recorded in Texas. And we're out there on a bridge, baking in the sun, trying to get our day. And here comes this armada of boats, of these drunken rednecks who were blasting music, blasting their boat engines, screaming at us, just trying to do whatever they could to get the point across that they weren't happy that we shut down the bridge. They were doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And I got so angry. And, I looked at my cast and crew. I was like, trust me, I'm from here originally.
Yeah.
This is not a representation of the majority of people that live here. So that was really crazy. All these boats just coming at us, revving their engines, screaming. It was quite frankly, it was very stupid of them. But
playing the ride of the Valkyries. Dun, 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 dun.
Right.
Just to disrupt the filming. Man, if you are not famous in your town at this point now, be sure probably you are.
Maybe infamous.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. I don't know if people ask you this, but this is something that I'm into action films as well and fighting. And you have a serious martial artists background. What's your martial art, a favorite one? Do you keep track of UFC and fighters? Are you friends with them? Tell us a little bit about martial arts.
Well, the martial arts have been a huge, huge part of my life since I was a small child. And I practice American karate, which is basically, it's a part of the Superfoot system. Bill Superfoot Wallace, who's a famous kickboxer and karate black belt. It's kind of we're part of his system, and it's more of a modernized karate that comes from, obviously karate comes from Okinawa and Japan, and our school has been around about 50 years. Our main school, the school that I've been training with, has been around for 30 years. And
yeah, I saw the other day on your, I don't remember when, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I saw the other day you were like, one of your teachers is been around for 30 years teaching, and you posted something on your Instagram account. I said, oh my God.
His school has been open for 30 years, and I started with him when I was 13, and I'm 38 now. So actually, in a couple of months, I'm coming up on my 25th year of studying martial arts. And because I was 13 when I started, and then like a month later turned 14 or whatever.
Was that born the martial artist background? Was that born out of the Karate Kid movies or not? There is no relation.
There is absolutely a relation. The Karate Kid, Van Damme movies, Chuck Norris, The Last Dragon, all Ninja Turtles, all of this stuff, I grew up watching and wanting to do that, but I understood that those were just movies. I wanted to do the real thing. And so I started training, and I've never stopped. I've been doing it, again, for almost 25 years, but I had an interest in it since I was probably 3 years old. So it's a big part of my life, and it's helped me, be a very disciplined person and a disciplined filmmaker, and it's just fun. It's an amazing thing to do.
Yeah, that was my question. If there was any relation to the discipline that you bring from other fields of your personal life into filmmaking. And discipline, of course, you have to have discipline to write. You have to have discipline to prepare for everything. From these movies that you have mentioned so far, for example, Karate Kid, Chuck Norris films, Rocky, which one was like maybe very influential on you, or there was like a pivotal moment in your life, and then you said, this is something that I really need to pursue? Is there one movie that you would elect as like in the top 5 or top 3?
Well, pursue in martial arts or to pursue as a filmmaker?
As a filmmaker.
I would say that it has to be Raiders of the Lost Ark. That film really, so basically, I'm a little kid. I grew up on a lake, and I had this whole vast playground, if you will, this lake and the countryside and everything. And so my imagination ran wild. Raiders of the Lost Ark was huge for me because my mother bought the tape, which I still have, that very tape. And I played it over and over and over again and studied it and was inspired by it. I mean, I wanted to be Indiana Jones. And then I became an actor, and I wanted to play Indiana Jones. And then I realized all along I wanted to be the guy who made Indiana Jones.
Nice.
and now I'm kind of getting to make movies. But it was certainly Raiders of the Lost Ark, certainly. And another thing special about that is one of my favorite memories of my life was watching that movie over and over again with my grandfather. The same grandfather who introduced me to both Rocky and The Karate Kid, both films obviously just as inspirational and have changed my life. So, nice. But yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot your family. So this is great. Are you a family guy? How is this relation with your grandparents and family? Do you still gather and watch films together? What's their opinion about your own films now?
Well, it's unfortunately my grandparents are gone, but my parents and my brother, etc. We don't necessarily watch movies together much anymore, but they're always there for my premieres, for my screenings. The red carpet, so to speak. So they're very supportive of of my films. But I do hold my family dear because every one of them is a character, and they've kind of inspired me in their way to write characters, to create characters, and to keep going and keep making films. So yeah, I mean, I'm very close to my family, and there's nothing better than, you know, seeing your family in the audience for your movie. It's just something very special.
Yes, I can imagine. So you've learned a lot from them. I've researched a little bit, and I'm going to read here because this is your quote according to IMDb. You have a quote that I found, and it is the following. My approach, I'm cheating now. I have a card here with your quote. My approach to filmmaking is simple. Learn from the past, embrace the present, look to the future. So the thing is, you not only learned from the past, especially with your family members, but I'm going to sound cheesy here, and you learned from the past, but you also learned from the best. Tell us a little bit, how did you meet John Avildsen? Oh my God, that is fantastic. Because as I know, he was one of your idols, and he kind of became a mentor. How did this story happen?
Yeah, so John Avildsen, you know, in case the audience isn't aware, John Avildsen directed Rocky. He directed The Karate Kid, and a whole bunch of movies that were very influential to me and to millions. So John was my favorite filmmaker because he made my two favorite films of all time, and mine
as well. I didn't get lucky, or I didn't make an effort to meet him as you did, but I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please.
Oh no, but yeah, and he would love that, and he would have loved you and to have met you. Obviously, he's passed, as you know. But I one day, it was in 2012, early 2012. I was about to start shooting a movie, and I would get on YouTube and just listen to directors talk and interviews. Sorry, I got a fly or a gnat or something flying around here. Let's see if I can catch it with a chopstick. Huh?
Welcome to Texas.
Exactly. So basically, it was 2012, and I was watching these interviews on YouTube, and I just stumbled upon, like, I remember specifically, I was watching Sidney Pollack speak, and then I came across a John Avildsen interview from the 80s, and I looked at the name of the uploader, and it was like Avildsen 1221 or something like that. And I said, oh, this must be a big John Avildsen fan to like name their channel after the guy. Then I realized this is the John Avildsen's page.
Oh my God.
He is the one uploading these things. So I don't know if you can still do it on YouTube, but at the time you could send a direct message, like a private message to the person's channel. And so I sent him like an email or a message that was half fan, half business, you know, half fan, half filmmaker. And a day later, I left my information for him. A day later, I get an email from him to my personal, like my actual email address, and I'll never forget. It said, "Yo, Derek, what can I do for you?"
This is amazing.
Yeah,
I was like, heart attack.
I was like, whoa. So I told him exactly what he could do for me. I wrote him back, and we started this kind of rapport, and we would communicate back and forth. So I sent him, I asked him if I could send him a script, you know, because I was like, oh, I'm going to bring the great John Avildsen back out of obscurity. He's going to direct my movie. He said, look, kid, I get a lot of scripts. I tell you what, if you send me the script and a check for $1,000, I will read your script. If I like it, I'll do it. If I don't like it, I will script doctor, give notes
Yes.
to your script. And if that's worth $1,000 to you, here's my mailing address.
He wanted to check if you were really serious about it, and he charged you $1,000.
$1,000. Oh, and I wrote the check. I sent the check. I sent the script. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call. It's John Avildsen. He said, Derek, get a pen and paper ready. Your script sucks. Let's talk about it. I was just like, so we spoke on the phone for 2 hours and 45 minutes. He went over every page, and he mailed me back his handwritten notes on my script. He mailed it back to me.
My God.
Well,
it's worth gold now. It's more than Bitcoin now, those pages.
Hey, absolutely. It's funny. You see this little, it's sitting in one of these cubbies back there. So I've got it back there. And I've put it up. But then about 6 months went by. I flew out to Los Angeles because I wasn't living there yet. I've spent years in Los Angeles since then, living out there. And he met with me. We met for like 3 hours. I offered him another script. He didn't charge me $1,000, but he turned me down. So now I'm like, oh my God, I flew back home. I'm like, man, he's turned down 2 of my scripts. So then I called him and I said, look, I have an idea. If I can't make a movie with you, I'd like to make a movie about you. I'd like to make a documentary on you. He said, you want to work with me, kid? You're in. That's how I met.
And it shows a lot of your, he taught you this, do not quit. And you were like insisting. You got no, you didn't get no as an answer, right?
Absolutely. I bugged him and just, he really saw like, hey, I'm serious. And he became a mentor, a dear friend. He was in my life for 5 years, the last 5 years of his life, but he was in my life my whole life. He just didn't know it until the last 5 years. And he was just a wonderful filmmaker. But I got to tell you about that $1,000. He told me in a meeting with one of my producers a couple years later, he said, Derek doesn't know this, but I was just kidding about the $1,000. I didn't know he was going to actually send me a check, and he did. So I was like, this kid's serious. I was like, well, can I have the money back? He's like, no.
No, of course not. Okay, nice, very nice. But it shows a lot of your work ethic, and this is great. He said $1,000. Okay, that's his price. This is good. Derek, we mentioned earlier in our chat awards, and I know you have received a lot of awards. This is amazing. I'm not going to list them all in here, but it's something serious. I think you were nominated to something around 20 or even more awards, and you amassed like the most majority of them when you were nominated for them. So my question to you is the following. It is great to be nominated. It is even better to win. But how does this affect, or it doesn't affect, how did it affect your attitude? Does it bring, is it a burden? Because now you have the feeling, you have this responsibility, oh my God, I'm involved in a new project and I want more awards. I want to be recognized by my work. So is it a burden, or is it like fuel? You say, you know what? I did it once. I think I can do it again. What's your attitude towards these awards that you have won during your career?
Although I'm very humbled by awards and I am a very competitive person, I don't make movies to win awards. I don't, obviously an Academy Award is kind of like the heavyweight championship of the world for us filmmakers. Yeah. Of course I want to win an Oscar one day, or at least be nominated. But as far as I don't make movies for awards. What I love about the awards, the wins and the nominations, to me, that means that my team and I really worked hard and our work is getting recognized. If I'm the one with the trophy, it's still a reflection of my entire team and in the product that we put out. So while awards are fun and okay, and I'm so honored, it doesn't make me feel any other way than I still want to just make a good movie. I still want to make a good product. If we get nominated, if we get a win, great. If not, that's not why we made the film anyway. Now, the flip side to that is investors, people that put money into the projects.
Yes.
They don't care about awards as much as they care about, does your movie make money? So that I do care about, because this is a business.
Yeah.
And you have to make money for your investors or they won't invest again. So my reward these days is if the film is a success and the people that funded my projects make some money back, that means a lot. But hey, if we get a trophy or a nomination, it still means a lot.
Nice.
I just want to tell stories.
Yeah, it also helps, right, to sell the movie. It got these awards and that. But as I mentioned earlier, you are always as good as your last project. So it's great. It opens doors, but, well, it doesn't add much beyond that. And I see your responsibility to the investors. This is great. This is great. Let's talk about your latest project, which I think is your latest project. Correct me if I am mistaken. Bloodstreams. What is it about, and what attracted you into directing this? Do you write this one as well?
I co-wrote it with my co-writer, Frank Mangarelli, out of Chicago. He's one of my best friends, and this was the first thing we ever wrote together, and we had a blast. But yeah, it's called Bloodstreams, and it's a narrative feature film. It's not a documentary, which, a lot of people think I just do documentaries. They forget. No. I also make movies. So I can't talk about it too much or what it's about, because it's not out yet, and we're still working on distribution deals and platforms and release dates and that whole side of the business. But we are in post-production, and so I'm editing every day. But it's a drama, thriller, crime, and it's just a really cool, fun, intense drama, intense thriller about these criminals. Everyone in the film is a criminal who something happens in about 24 hours, and it changes them, or at least some of them, and they have to overcome. I can't talk about what it is yet, but it's very unique, very original, and it's very cool. People say, well, what are you trying to say with Bloodstreams? Nothing. I just wanted to make a cool movie. Okay. And I mean, I think it's going to be a cool movie. But I did, Frank and I and my whole team, we've kind of left it open to a trilogy. And that is where we want to take Bloodstreams. We want to do a trilogy.
Is there a cliffhanger, or it is just like open? If you make it good, if you don't have a trilogy, it's still like a closed project.
Well, I guess you'll have to wait and see.
Okay. This is great. Let me ask you something. You have been very, very active in this past 2 years. What are the most difficult things that you find when you are like trying to develop a project that eventually will become a film? What's the most difficult thing in filmmaking, in your opinion?
Finding the money.
Okay.
That is number one. Now, there's money out there, but getting people to sign on and taking a risk to invest in your project is very, very difficult. So I would say finding the funding is the number one thing. But also, when you or you show up for that first day of film of this on set. The hardest thing to do is to kind of get back into the groove, because then from where you left off last time you were on set of another project.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, shoot something easy on the first day. That way the cast and crew can kind of, work it out a little bit and kind of relax and kind of get used to it and get used to you and used to each other. But yeah, finding the money, that's the hardest thing. And I don't say that lightly. It really is tough. But as far as everything else, if you're prepared, there's nothing really hard at all. It all comes together. I don't find my job hard at all. It's just getting that job is the hard part.
Yes. Okay. It's getting into the ring, the difficult part. It's not the fight itself, because once you're there and you're prepared, come what may, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, the fight, that's the fun part.
Yes.
But
Yes.
getting in the fight, like you said, that's the hard part.
Yes. Once I was talking to a director. I don't remember who, but I remember the conversation. And I asked, he said it is a lot of pressure. The first day, the first take, the first scene, because everybody's waiting for you, like, to give directions. And then he said, I have a technique. I arrive on set and I just tell people, put a camera here, use this lens, we are shooting in that direction, and let's start. And then they start like gearing up. And after that, he stops alone because there is no more pressure on his shoulders. And then he says, okay, now I'm going to think what I'm going to do here. And then he looks at the set, and then he says it's easier to ask people to move the camera than to wait for everybody like looking at him and what should we do here. This is a crazy story.
That's a great script.
It's a good technique, right? It's just crazy. I remember when I was on set with Sly, he knows exactly what he wants, but he has, I don't know if you experienced this working with him. It was the first day of shooting The Expendables, and people said, what should we do? And then it came to my mind, the thing about the camera, set the camera here and there to take the burden off of his shoulders. No, he has this habit of closing his eyes, and I think the movie is ready somehow in his mind. And then put a camera here and do that, do this. And then he starts. He likes to set the mood for action as soon as possible. And I'm going to ask you now about the mood. When you are writing for a new project, what's your technique? When I am writing, for example, for an action scene, I like to have a soundtrack, an action soundtrack. If it's a dramatic scene, I like to have this mood, especially with music, or use the pain, the physical, or if you are brokenhearted. How do you set the mood when you are writing? And when you are filming, do you use your pain, or do you use the joy and the adrenaline of the moment? How do you deal with these things when you are directing or writing?
With writing, I certainly play music like you do. I play music. I put movies in the Blu-ray player and kind of pick scenes and get inspired. And I also start at the end. I like writing the ending of the movie before I write anything else, so I know where I'm going, so I know where I'm ending up.
Okay.
So I'll write the ending, I'll bounce back to the beginning, and I'll write that. Then I write everything else last. So now I know where I'm headed, and now I know where I'm starting. Then I just fill in the rest. But I always listen to music. And I do channel a broken heart. I do channel pain, loss, death. I do channel those things. But I also, like you said, I channel funny moments. Funny people in my life, funny characters, things that I remember. I don't create characters. There's enough characters in your life that are already real. I like to take from real life and then put it in. to a
Okay.
fictional character.
Yeah.
But creating a character, that's a hard thing to do. But I'll go, hey, what about my crazy uncle 20 years ago? He was interesting. Let me write a character kind of like he was.
Okay.
And then you kind of go, oh, okay. Now I have all these interesting people and interesting things that have happened. And of course, you turn it into fiction. But music is a huge. I listen to movie soundtracks every day of my life. I think I've listened to the Braveheart soundtrack more than anything I've ever heard ever.
Yeah. What is it, James Horner?
James Horner, my favorite film composer of all time, the best. Absolutely.
Great. Yes. I found out something recently, which is if you type in Google like the name of a movie and ambience, somebody's like uploading. It's not the original soundtrack, but it's something based on the original soundtrack. So if you go like Star Wars ambience, and then you have the different worlds of Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, you have the same thing, and James Bond ambience. It helps a lot.
Nice.
Yes. Let me ask you something. You seem very open to different projects. You do like documentaries, you do feature films, different topics. From the documentaries that I have watched from you, like Frank, that is 40 years of Rocky. You find a way to create a dramatic curve into a documentary. You stick to the facts, but your storytelling makes us like, okay, I don't want this movie to end. Is there a technique? How do you do that? You just follow the thing chronologically, or you try to connect one subject to the next? Because there is a lot of storytelling into a documentary. It's not like, and now the penguins are diving into the cold waters. It's not boring at all. Do you think instinctively you create a relation into the fiction talent that you have to tell stories and the documentaries? How do you mix the two?
Well, absolutely. I definitely do, and thank you, by the way, for noticing that. I do that intentionally. I always say, let's make the documentary feel like a movie. Not that there's anything wrong with documentaries that are slow and things are very, like you said, like the penguin, and then, oh, look, there's a...
You need these documentaries to sleep as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, that's all great, but for me, it's like, let's jump in, let's entertain and educate the audience and give them a ride. So I make sure to have cinematic music,
Yes.
ups and downs, act 1, act 2, act 3. And sometimes I do go out of order. I don't necessarily go in chronological order. Like for the John Avildsen documentary, it was kind of all over the place, but it works. But Stallone Frank, that is, we kind of did start at the beginning and to the present. So I definitely intentional. But then I also take things from my feature films. I take things from documentaries, and I put them into a narrative format. So to me, it's like, when I do the documentaries, people say, "Oh, you're documentary filmmaker Derek Wayne Johnson." I go, no, just filmmaker.
The filmmaker, of course.
Just filmmaker, because
Yes.
I do both, and so definitely intentional. And to me, I think it works. Now, I have been criticized by critics and fans for being a little too fast in my documentaries and not letting the information simmer. But I'm sitting there like, and that's fine. I love criticism. Criticism makes me better, and I usually agree with the criticism. But that one, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think we should sit and savor this moment. Let's go. And so definitely intentional.
Nice. Yeah, I believe you created this nice mix, this intersection of fiction, reality, and storytelling, in all of your projects. So you are in the fictional products. you do your research, and in the documentaries you build it in a way that it makes sense, and there is a dramatic curve. And then when you, for example, Frank, that is, oh my God, that thing was amazing. And actually, that in the premiere, this is when we have met for the first time. Remember that?
I do. And, I always, when I talk about you, which I do, I'm like, it was so cool. You were the first person to ever say what I'm about to say. You're the first person that ever showed up to one of my premieres or screenings that wasn't a family or a friend or someone I already knew, right? You were the first person that came up to me, and I'll never forget what you said to me. You said, "I'm here to meet you."
Yes. And I was the luckiest guy that day, because I entered before everybody else in the movie theater, because, man, I just needed to go to a restroom. And then the lady allowed me to go inside. There was this huge line outside, everybody waiting to meet and greet and watch the film. And then I just asked the lady look, seriously, I really need to go to the restroom. And boom, 2 steps into the movie theater in Philadelphia, right? And boom, I saw you, and I said, oh my God, this is from heaven, And then I introduced myself, and I told you this. I remember I came here to meet you, because that's true. That's true. I traveled.
Yeah, you did. You traveled for it, and it just meant so much to me. And when I tell people that story, and I'm like, and here we are talking 2 years later, but it's like that meant so much to me, because sometimes, because I'm friends with say Sly or whoever, John, it's like that's where but you were like, hey, I'm here to meet you, and that just meant so much to me. So
yes. Yeah, but that was sincere. I loved your work even before I had met you. I've been like keeping track. I keep track of interesting, talented people, and I'm telling you this. I told you this in person, so now it's public. I like your work very much. And then I was living at the time very close to Washington, D.C. In the premiere, I had no guarantee that I would even see you, but I said, oh my God, this guy's coming here kind of close to me. If I recall well, it was like 2.5 hours driving, and my wife, always very supportive. I said, you know what? I think I should go and try to meet this guy, because I think it's not that he's going to be somebody someday. He is already somebody, and this is the day. And it was amazing, because I traveled when I got inside, we shook hands, and I said, mission accomplished. And it was great, because the film was fantastic. You introduced me to Frank. I had worked with Sly before, but I had never met Frank Stallone before. He is such a cool guy. And I met David, one of the producers. He's such a nice guy too. I forgot his last name. Help me.
Polamini.
I'm sorry?
Polamini.
Yes, exactly. And he's Italian, and I am Italian, well, Brazilian Italian. And then he said, Paisana too. Very like mobster-like. I found it very interesting. Well, you mentioned Sly, and I have a question. And I'm sure, people ask you questions all the time about famous people that you have worked with. You have worked with because of these projects that you have been involved with. Oh my God, Bill Conti, and he I don't know if he still is the conductor of the Oscar, but my God, iconic soundtracks with him. You have worked with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sly and many other people in the industry. I want to ask a specific question about how did you end up being the editor? Was it John Hirschfeld, or was it Sly who invited you to edit the documentary about Rocky versus Drago?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for your kind words. It was Sly. Sly, he FaceTimed me, and he was just kind of like, hey, how's it going? And hadn't talked to you in a while. And we had just released 40 Years of Rocky, like maybe 2 months before. And he FaceTimed me and we were talking. And he said, look, I have something you might be interested in. I just wanted to talk to you about it. It was so cool. And he told me about this footage. Now, he didn't say, like, I have this documentary I want you to edit. He said, I have all this footage. And he explained to me that it was shot on an iPhone by John Hertzfeld, who was already a friend of mine because I interviewed him for Stallone Frank, that is. And, of course, John is Sly's friend of 50 years. And he was explaining it to me, and I thought, hey, of course. Yeah, of course I'll do it. So then, John called and was like, hey, Sly told me that you're interested. I said, yeah. And then we start talking, send me the footage. Sly FaceTimes me again, not long after that. And we're just kind of hanging out talking about it. And then John and I again talked, and it just became this thing where I said, I kind of was fishing for for reassurance. And I asked John, I didn't ask Sly. I asked John, I said, why me? Like
Rambo.
I was,
why now? Why me?
Yeah. Why me? Yeah. And John said, you were the first and only choice that he and I both instantly said. He said, Sly loves you and he loves working with you. You were the first name out of our mouths.
Wow.
Man, I was like taken by that. So we worked on that for 5 months. 5 months. Sly hired me and John directed. So, John shot it all on the iPhone, and it was his vision that I, helped put together. And I edited that thing, and man, it was just a wonderful experience. So I knew all about Rocky versus Drago a year before everyone else. And I was watching it and editing it, and it was just an amazing experience. But it sounded like a brag just then. I didn't mean it that way, but I was so touched that they both said me.
Yes.
And so of course I had to say yes.
Yeah, I've watched an interview. I don't remember now which one, but I've watched one of your interviews, and at the time, it's been a while. At the time, the reporter asked you, hey, well, what are you doing now? And then you said, I'm involved in a project that I can't talk a lot about now, but soon you're going to know what's going to happen. And well, now when I watched the interview, I said, of course he was talking about that, right? And John is a very nice guy. I remember John on the set of The Expendables because he also made a documentary. It's called Inferno, which in Portuguese makes total sense. Inferno in Portuguese is hell. So it's Inferno, the making of The Expendables. And he's amazing. John Hertzfeld is I know, well, when you get to know him, you know why he is friends with Sly for such a long time. Okay. Despite the pandemic, you have had 2 years, like 2020 and 2021, very hectic for you. A lot of projects going on. A broken ankle, if I'm not mistaken. Was it your ankle that you broke?
Oh, my heel.
Oh, your heel. Okay.
The calcaneus, the heel.
Yes. I don't know. Anything else broken? Broken heart, maybe.
Oh, definitely broken heart.
Yeah.
2020 started out really bad for me.
Yeah.
I had I knew that I had 2 documentaries coming out, but it started with a broken heart, and then the pandemic, and then a broken heel. So 2020 was very rough on me, that's for sure.
But it was just the first act, because second and third act, you were like standing up and fighting again. Lots of projects coming up, and you got involved in many of them. Do you have in mind a releasing date for Bloodstreams?
We don't know. Well, we know 2022 is ideal, and we're almost finished with post-production. So we're currently, trying to strike the deal, the platform and the release date. But all we really know right now is we pretty certain it'll come out in 2022. Other than that, we don't really know. I mean, usually you want to make a movie when you have distribution already set, but we kind of put this one together so fast that we didn't even have time to do all of that. As a matter of fact, that's something interesting that I will speak on is on, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but this is what happened. On May 21st, 2021 is when I came up with the idea that I wanted to shoot a feature film again.
Oh my God.
So I talked to Frank Mangarelli, my co-writer. We started on May 21st. We were filming July 13th.
That's pretty quick.
Very quick. I remember telling Hertzfeld and Sly that, and they're like, what? How'd you do that? I don't know. But conceptualized it May 21st. We were shooting by July 13th. Here it is, December, and the movie's almost finished. Crazy.
All right. Well, I have another quote from you. Here we go. Sounds corny, but just follow your dream if making movies is what you want to do, right? The other day I watched Quentin Tarantino saying, it's a very fresh interview. He said that, if you see a movie in your mind and nobody else has made this film, it is your obligation, it is your gift from God to make that film. And you said something similar to that. I read your stuff before Quentin gave the interview, but this is like a recurring thing. If you have a dream, follow your dream. And this is great because this is fuel for everybody's dreams. But as a filmmaker, this is fuel, but that's not a plan. If you are going to give advice to aspiring filmmakers, what would be step 1, 2, 3? What would you tell them if they want to start a career in filmmaking? What would you tell people okay, you already have a dream, you have fuel, now do this? What would you advise them?
Well, I always say just do it. And that's a broad statement, but even in that quote, which was, I think, from an article from, 10 years ago or so, it's true. Just do it. Just if you have a dream, just making movies, you just have to do it. So how do you do it? Well, I don't know how you do it. You just do it. Look, everyone has what's the Mike Tyson quote? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yes, this is a famous one.
Exactly. Life in this industry is brutal. A minute ago we mentioned, 2020 I started with a broken heart. I had a life plan. I was going to get married. The wedding was ended or canceled.
Okay.
All right. 2 months before my wedding, my fiance broke it off. So that plan was gone. I had plans to buy a home and whatnot. The pandemic hit. I bought a home in another place that I didn't know I would buy a home. So that plan was gone. I didn't know I was going to break my heel and couldn't walk for 3 months, but Sylvester called and offered me a job. So all of my plans for 2020, all these things happen. So you never know. So my advice is just do it because you don't know what life is going to bring. And so, for example, I was going to direct a huge documentary. And in 2021, it got canceled. So I didn't say, and I hope this is a lesson on life and to filmmakers. This huge documentary got canceled. This was after I edited the one for Sly. I was going to make done. So that means I don't see a dime of that money. I said to myself, I'm going to take this opportunity like I did in 2020 when all those life changes happened, good and bad, and I'm going to make a movie. And that's how Bloodstreams came about, because one movie closed on the door on me, and I was able to do Bloodstreams. Now we're going to do a trilogy. Oh. So going back to just do it, that's how you do it. You don't sit around and wait. Do you go to film school? Yeah, I went to film school. Film school's great. But you have to learn, and you have to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to get your heart broken, to be rejected, to be turned away from this industry. So I could tell you like all this, like, oh, you got to do this, but I'm going to say you just do it. You figure it out.
Nice. You know, going back to two of the guys that I know are kind of mentors to you, and they have worked together, which is John Avildsen and Rocky. Oh, well, Stallone, he is Rocky, right? When they were filming the first one, there is a time, I think it's one of these documentaries about Rocky. Maybe yours, maybe 40 years of Rocky. I don't know, because there is a lot of mixed images in my mind now. But he couldn't just run anymore before the run at the pier. And he says, Sly tells John, I can't run anymore. Like, I'm falling apart. And then John Avildsen told Sly, oh, no, use the pain. This is going to transpire in the movie. And this is what you are telling us now. You kind of used your pain, used the bad things, and as an alchemist, you try to turn these things around and make something good out of it, right?
Absolutely. Or because the alternative is to do nothing at all. And then your movie, like Tarantino was saying, that idea that's unique to you, it's gone forever. But what's not gone forever is when you just say, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out. And then art is created out of chaos. And you do get that movie. And, you know, sometimes I get annoyed and I get bitter and I get down on myself because I'm like, okay, I'm 38. Yeah, I've had some success, but not the big success that I want. I should be directing studio movies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I go, well, my mentor, John Avildsen, was 40 when he made Rocky.
Unbelievable, right?
So then I'm like, okay. But then, you know, the clock ticks. I'm like, hey, better have my Rocky when I'm 40. That's not the point of what I'm saying. But you can't compare yourself to other people. Yes. Your journey is your journey. And if you want to make movies, you just got to go do it. And, you know, it's really up to you. And again, the hardest part is getting financing for your movie. It's very difficult. And there's no magical way of doing it. That I can't help anyone on. I get asked all the time, how do you find money for your projects? I think it just finds me.
Well, I have a printer in the backyard. That's how I make some money out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Derek, my friend, oh my God. You know, we could go on here talking for hours and hours, but then I think we should leave the building just like Elvis, you know, while the fans are still wanting more. And in advance, I am already, you know, consider yourself invited for a second chat whenever you want. I would love to chat again with you when you are releasing Bloodstreams, or if you have any other project, you know. And my God, that was enlightening. Very nice conversation. You shared a lot with us. I'm very happy to have had this opportunity to have this long conversation and have this thing like filmed. It's amazing. We're making history here, my friend.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. And I mean, the pleasure was all mine. I'm very honored that you asked me to do this. And you and I have talked for a while now just about talking and hanging out. I'm glad we got to do it this way, but I look forward to seeing you in person. And I look forward to visiting Brazil for the first time sometime. I can't wait to go down there. But seriously, I think you have a great thing going here, and I really appreciate it. And I'd love to come back and talk bloodstreams or talk about anything. So I really appreciate you having me.
Plenty of subject. Just as a cliffhanger, you mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, The Last Dragon. Oh my God, is that the one with the glow around the you have shown enough? Is this the movie that you were referring to?
Yes. Show enough. Bruce Leroy, you've got the glow. What a great movie and a great song.
Yes, that's amazing. I love this film. You know, I have a friend. His name is Renato, and he's going to be happy that I have just mentioned him now, because he was always cheering for Show Enough and not Bruce Leroy. And all of our friends in this group say, "Oh my God, how can you root for the bad guy?" You know, but he just loved the guy. You know, it's very funny. My friend, thank you very much for the conversation. Folks, this was Derek Wayne Johnson, director, writer, producer. God knows which more talents this guy have. And you can find him and a lot of his work. Where can we find you, Derek? Instagram is where I keep track of your latest news. Is Instagram the best place to keep track of you?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook. That's pretty much it. I'm pretty easy to find on there.
Yes. Well, what can I do for you? You see, please, guys, do not flood him with direct messages. The guy's busy, you know. And I wrote down here, your Instagram account is Derek Wayne Johnson, or you can find him at DW Johnson 16. Derek, once again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much for sharing with us. And to all of you, this was InterAction, the show that has action in the name, in the DNA, from the beginning to the end. My name is Daniel Bertorelli. Thank you very much if you stayed all the way with us here. Thank you. Bye-bye.